Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to the Montgomery County Commission on Common Ownership's webinar on solar strategies for condominium association and owners. My name is Mark Fine. I am the chairman of the commission. And with me, we have John Smith. He is commissioner and co-chair of the membership and education committee. We have Tom Deo. He is the CEO of Montgomery County Green Bank. Tony, if I slur it, I'm sorry. Tony Stefan. He is with, oh, my neck, I'm sorry. Upsun Solar. You've been with them 15 years, Tony? Is that correct?
No, just recently joined the company.
15 in the industry, I'm sorry.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, 15 in the industry and vast knowledge of the solar industry, commercial as well as residential. And then we have Cindy McCabe, who is also with Green Bank. She is the residential solar program manager. Now, for the webinar, if you have a question that you would like to ask the panel, we would ask that you use the function down the bottom where it says chat. You'll see a raise hand symbol. Please raise your hand. We will take the questions first come, first serve, but we will do the questions after the presentation. If you would like, you could also type in your question in the chat box, or you could use the Q&A feature, and then once the presentation is over, as I said, we'll take them first come, first serve. We've had a couple of folks already put some chat info in, and they've emailed it to us. We have those, and we will be addressing those questions first. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Tom.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, John. We really appreciate the opportunity to have these conversations with common ownership communities. We've been having them now for a few years, and I think we've been able to bring a lot of new information out there. Over the course of the last 2 years, we've supported 3 different common ownership communities on energy efficiency activities. We've talked to a number of them about solar as a possibility for them. And we've got a couple more that we're in the process of talking to that are taking on some large energy efficiency projects as well. So we really find that our ability to get in touch with you all help sort of inform you as board members about how to think about energy efficiency. Renewable energy as a service we can offer to the community. And we're grateful for Mark and John for giving us this opportunity to make these presentations. So for those who might not have been on a prior presentation, the Montgomery County Green Bank, we're a nonprofit, mission-driven organization. We were actually created by the county in 2015. Our charter comes from the county, but we're not part of the county. We're actually an independent 501c3 nonprofit corporation, but we were created in order to support the county to achieve its climate action goals. And those of you might be online or so, we would have seen that the county actually released its current climate action plan. It's in its draft form, and it's out on the county website. And if you have an interest, take a read of that and offering your comments to the county as they get to finalizing that plan. But the Green Bank's purpose is to accelerate investment in clean energy across the county, both in support of residents and businesses. And so in this area, we're working with common ownership communities. We actually support both residents and businesses because the residents live in the condominiums, and the condominium as an association is in the utilities mind a commercial business. And so we look at you both the condominiums as a commercial enterprise as well as homes to many hundreds of thousands of people in the county. We're a Green Bank. Even though bank is in our name, we're actually not a bank. We're a financial intermediary that work with financial institutions to bring affordable, flexible financing to county residents. We don't have as much money as the private capital markets do. And so our job is to use what little money we do have to leverage that, stand behind the financial partners, but allow them to bring more flexibility, lower interest rates to the county residents and businesses. And our work is all in support of the county reaching those climate reduction goals of getting to 0% greenhouse gas emissions by 2035. So what are we here to talk to you about? We're here to talk to you about solar for condominium communities. It's a question that comes up often when we're talking to common ownership communities. How can we put solar on our properties? Back in October, we had a presentation to the home ownership associations in which the properties there are under fee simple ownership, meaning the owner owns the entire property, the roof, the walls, the ground, and they can do what they want with the property within the guidelines of a homeowner administration. This presentation is for the other type of common ownership community of a condominium, in which you're under a specific legal regime, and you know, the roofs and many of the exterior walls and other parts of it are owned in common, and you own the inside of your unit. And so this presentation is specific to how to think about solar for condominium communities. If you happen to be on the line and you're an owner in a home ownership association, enter a question. When we get to the end, we can certainly answer those questions, but the presentation is going to focus in on condominiums. Couple considerations to have on the condominiums. First is the common areas. There's many things that the association has responsibility for: the lights, the pool, the site lighting, the heating in the common area hallways, and so forth. And those run through a commercial meter on the property. And so that's why, in the eyes of the utility, you are at the association is a commercial enterprise because it has a commercial meter. And the association pays that meter, those bills that come through on those commercial meters. And then second is you have individual homes. So you all are owning a home within the condominium regime. And we found that there's just generally two ways that the condominiums are set up. One is that there are a set of central systems in which all the utilities are paid by the association because there's central electric, central heating, central air. And so your assessments that you pay incorporate the utility payment. And so that's one structure. And in many ways, the common area and those central systems can be thought of in one way. The other way, which is highly common with most of the condominiums here, is that the individuals in their own homes there have their own individual meter, and they pay the utility, the electric utility, on their own for their electric consumption. And so you have two different structures, and we'll address how you can, as an individual, participate in solar underneath both those regimes. So how we're gonna talk this through. I'm about ready to end and going to hand it over to Tony and Cindy. But when you think about common areas and you think about solar, you think about a solar array that's sized and suitable in order to support the common area costs. And Tony's going to go into a lot of detail around that. But within the common areas, including those that might be central systems, you put the solar array up to cover the costs of which the common area or the association has. So on the individual homes, if it's a central system, you would participate in that common owned solar array. If you're an individual in which you're paying your own electric bill, your choices are different in order to participate in solar as an individual homeowner. One that's available to any homeowner, anyone that pays a utility bill, is you can actually choose a clean energy choice election from your utility. There's a whole, if you go out to the Pepco or the BG&E or the Potomac Edison, whichever is your utility, you can go out onto the websites and look for clean energy choices for the source of your electricity. And you can look on those to find those that have 100% solar as the generation for that electricity that you're buying. You pay that on your electric bill, and you can participate in the solar economy simply by choosing a clean energy choice of which renewable energies and solar is what that they're committing to provide. They go out onto the open market, they procure it. You don't have to do anything more than choose that. It's a way to participate. It's not a direct way, but it is a way to participate. The other way is community solar, and Cindy's going to go through a lot more explanation of what that is. But there, and in fact, you are subscribing and buying into a particular solar array in your community, not your condominium community, but in the general Montgomery County community. So we're going to walk through these so that you understand each of them from the association level and from the individual homeowner level. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Tony from Ips and Solar. Ips is one of our solar partners that participates in the solar energy programs that we make available, which you'll hear about more from Cindy later on. They've been in the community for a very long time, doing terrific quality work in the community. We're grateful for them to be a part of this and to lend their expertise into informing you more about solar and how to think about solar for your condominium. So Tony, it's in your court.
Thank you, Tom. So just a quick background on Ips and Solar. Ipsen was started by a couple of individuals that worked at the Department of Energy, which I worked at for a couple years and actually knew these guys. And the company was started, come to find out, because they had a bad experience. This one gentleman, Joe, one of the founders, had a bad experience with an installer. So they decided to start a solar company. So that was back in 2016. I'm new with the company, but not new to the industry, doing commercial development in the state of Virginia primarily. I will say this, we operate in the DMV, the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, which are all three very different markets. In Montgomery County, Maryland is different. So, you know, I got to go to school a little bit on, you know, what's going on with Montgomery County. But just by way of background, I wanted to share that. Next slide. So talk about the solar development process in general. I will say this, and I said this to Tom when we were talking about this presentation, is solar, rooftop solar and ground mount solar is very site specific. You have to have you know, a good site to get any production from photovoltaics. But in general, the solar development process begins with an analysis of utility bills. That it also requires typically a site visit, and our guys, and I've done this, we'll jump up on a roof and we'll get an idea of what the condition of the roof is. And we'll actually do a desktop analysis. We'll actually superimpose panels on a roof. We'll run conduit to a meter. We'll see how long that run is and how much energy we can produce relative to the energy bills that we've been provided for that meter to see if a deal pencils. We'll put all that into a proposal and we'll send that to the client and discuss and present. That's your solar site survey. There's fascinating, interesting, publicly available tools for individuals that want to take a look at their own site. NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab, has a fantastic site, and there are other systems that we use to get the solar production for a longitude and latitude specific to a building. So we'll look at, we'll actually, you know, put a design on a roof and actually be able to build it. After that, if we get the go-ahead from the client, we'll go to permitting, which is submitted to the county. They are used to working with our Ipsen design guys and application specialists. We'll then procure the components. We are, back up a step here, we're an EPC and O&M provider. We're engineering, procurement, and construction firm, and we also do operating and maintenance. So we would procure the equipment and then we would construct per our solar site design and per the plans and specs that we've submitted to the county for a permit. After the system is completed, we have county inspectors that will certify. We have master electricians and other tradesmen that will sign off and we'll get our operating permit. We do any operating and maintenance that's required can be farmed out to us. And we also do a commissioning where we show the owner what they purchased, how it operates. The O&M component is not something that I would say most solar owners have to worry with, because there's no moving parts with a photovoltaic panel. The inverter has no moving parts. So there's not much that can go wrong. A fuse may blow, but typically it's low maintenance. Next slide. So again, anyone new to, and I apologize for those that may have solar already or have some experience with this, but just simply I'll just go over how it works. And again, I'll emphasize that solar is pretty site specific. So how it works is the sun shines most days, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes at night, definitely at night doesn't shine. So you get some sunlight. It'll produce a direct current as a result of the energy that's generated from a photovoltaic panel that's typically on a roof to a wire. The wire is then connected to something called an inverter. The inverter then takes that direct current from a photovoltaic panel, turns it into an alternating current that goes into a switchgear, your switchgear into your building, and then through your meter. And the way electricity works is if you have a load in the building and there's sun, you'll get your electricity from solar. If it's cloudy or dark and at night, you continue to be grid tied in a net metering arrangement so that you will then get electricity from the grid when you're not getting solar from or electricity from solar. The net metering agreements, talk about that a little bit, is basically an agreement that says that you will accumulate credits during the time that the solar is working that exceeds the load in the building. So if, for example, in the summer and in the late spring, likely there'll be more production from solar, depending on the size of the array, than the building is using. And so those kilowatt hours are placed on your bill that serve as a credit for times when you basically use those credits for offsetting your bill when you're using grid power. And on a 12-month basis, the ideal is on a 12-month basis, you will have a net zero. So you've accumulated enough kilowatt hours by the sun to get at the end of 12 months, a zero bill on that particular meter. So let's go to the next slide. And just sort of as a sort of review of how this works, photovoltaic panels are typically warranted for 25 years. These are long dated assets. These, as I said, no moving parts, they last a long time. The savings can be predicted based on the longitude and latitude and the solar production of a particular site. And in addition, as I say, the panels have a very predictable lifespan and production curve. The thing that you get is energy independence. Again, if an array can be built and offset a meter, you have essentially energy independence. When the sun shines, you get solar. I have solar on my house, and just about every sunny day I run outside and I look at the readout of the inverter to make sure that I'm getting good production in that day. And it's exciting, it's fun, it's good to know that you've got green energy. There are incentives that may or may not be something that the condo association can take advantage of. But what those individuals that can take advantage of tax credits and incentives, if they have a tax appetite, they can harvest those tax credits. And those individuals typically fund these projects. So there are third-party financing vehicles that are funded by tax credits. And a portion of that tax credit is then a pass-through to the homeowners association or the condo association. So the incentives that are available help at the end of the day the cost of the system. We found that there's an increase in property value with solar. It's, as I say, these are long dated assets that can be conveyed with property and they just continue on with the life of the building. You can if we do build a system and it's commissioned, we would promote that so that you can say that your in your building, your environment, your community is environmentally responsible. Next slide. So into sort of the specifics of what is doable these days with condominiums. We've divided this up into two sort of sections, the 1 meter sort of typical, and then the 2+ meters scenario. So typically what we're seeing as EPCs are the 1 meter scenario where there's a common meter and it might feed a common area or some other facilities. And those are, provided we have sufficient roof space or other space, we basically can just run our wires to that meter to offset that 1 meter. And the savings would go on that bill. It's very easy to administer, and it's clear that that meter, that homeowners association owns that bill. Again, very site specific. If there's not enough roof space to make a deal pencil, then it's sometimes not possible to do solar. So we'll talk a little bit about sort of that in the summary, but the other side is when you have more than 1 meter common area and other meters. And the benefit there is that obviously if you have the space for the solar, you can get offset and net meter credit for each of those meters. In the first scenario, you would get net metering credit, but also in the, just more is better, so to speak. It's more costly to run our equipment to more than 1 meter, and so it's important to have a good design and layout and a cost analysis relative to what the condo is paying in terms of a bill. So part of the design process is to gather that bill data and to compare that with the production that a system could produce compared with the savings, potential savings for solar. Next slide, please. So again, we've had a question about roofs, I believe, and a roof age is important. If a condominium association is getting ready to do a new roof, that's the time to think about solar. Again, PV is a 25-year useful life asset. Photovoltaics will last longer and produce longer, but roof age is important. Roof type is important. Roof orientation and pitch is important. We don't like putting panels on north-facing, pitched roofs. You won't get sun in, the wintertime. These days, I'm not getting any solar on my north-facing roof, so I don't have PV there. what's also very important is how much usage that meter is getting. You know, certainly we want to offset and give net metering credits to those common areas. And again, number of buildings and meters, that will determine, you know, the cost and the offset. So again, site specific. Solar is very site specific. Next slide, please. And that is my our contact information. I think I gave Cindy my direct email and phone number, but you can reach us. We do residential and commercial solar, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. We did get a comment from Jerry who said that we can hear you great, even if you don't hold up your microphone. Jerry wanted to tell you that. Okay.
Say again?
We got a comment from Jerry who said that we can hear you fine, even if you don't hold up your microphone. So I thought I'd pass it over. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So basically, I'm going to touch on a little bit more about community solar for individual condo owners. Tony, I don't know if you want to man the Q&A while I'm speaking. I answered a few questions while you were talking. In the Q&A, they're on the bottom. So a couple different options, as I mentioned, for individual condo owners. Community solar is really the option that we recommend, since the condo owner does not own the roof. For the condominium association, the areas of the association that are common, or the areas that are fed with central utility systems, could have a solar array to support the meters that are coming from those common areas. So I'll go into that on the next slide. Thanks, Tom. Community solar subscription is what I'll talk a bit more about. The solar array would be built within the utility territory. And what I mean by that is that in Montgomery County, most of us have PEPCO, but we do have BG&E in a small section of Silver Spring, and we do have Potomac Edison up in the northwest part of the county. So whichever is your utility, that solar array that you subscribe to would be in that same territory, and it would be developed and owned by a private third party. The owner of the solar array would sell subscriptions to customers in the market, and usually in solar, we look to get a price that's below the going cost of electricity with that utility company. Neighborhood Sun is a great example. We do some work with them. We support what they do, and they have community solar subscriptions. The customer, which in this case would be the condo owner, would sign a subscription contract for a certain amount of time, and you would be allocated a number of kilowatts of a solar array. So basically, if you imagine a large solar array with hundreds of solar panels, you can think of it that a few of those solar panels, maybe 5 or so, are earmarked for your utility bill. So anyone who pays a utility bill can subscribe to that market. The customer would then pay a subscription price, and it depends upon the subscribing organization and what the price would be. So you can take a look. You can Google Community Solar Montgomery County, and you would get metering credits on your utility bill, and it would basically take away the usage from your utility bill and offset the subscription payment in that way. And as we said, we usually shoot for a component of savings on that. If you could go to the next slide for me, Tom. So this is a good example. This is a PEPCO bill. Some of you may only look at the bottom of this bill where it says how much you need to pay and what date it's due. But I would encourage you to read all of the pages and take a look. On the bottom of this slide is the website for Neighborhood Sun, and the resources section is where I got this copy of a bill from. One thing to note here is in red, it says new neighborhood sun credits. So whichever community solar company you subscribe to is where that name would be instead of neighborhood sun, and it would subtract it directly from your electric charges for that month. So that's wonderful. Anyone who pays a utility bill can take advantage of this. Now, one thing I do want to point out is the chart here on the right side. This chart here might be a little bit confusing, but on the y-axis, it'll show the number of kilowatts that you used, and on the x-axis is the month and year of your usage. So right here on every bill, if you actually go in and look at the bill, some of you might just pay automatically online, but if you go in and download your bill, this is how you can see how many kilowatts you use in 12 months and the 12 months before that. And this is what the solar installers are going to look at when they decide how to build your system. And this is what we're talking about when we say the word offset. How much does your system offset your usage in 1 year? And we don't want to just look at one bill, of course, because as you can see from this one, it does fluctuate throughout the months. If you could go to the next slide, please, Tom. Thanks. So if you see here on the top of the slide, this is geared towards the associations right now. So the last slide was about individual condo owners, and now we're going to talk about condo associations. So we have two different options here. The first one is ownership on the left. So in this situation, the condo association owns and insures the solar system. They would pay for the solar system upfront with funding from a loan in most cases, and pay predictable monthly payments. Now, it's important to note that almost all, if not all, condo associations are nonprofits, so they cannot take advantage of federal tax incentives. Okay. Normally, if there's a third party involved that can take that tax appetite. So if you involve a third party with a tax appetite, they can take those tax incentives and they can work backwards and put that savings back to the condo association. And we can talk a little bit more about how we can do that with the Green Bank and with other financing companies. The condo association would be able to take advantage of SRECs, which are solar renewable energy credits, which I will address on the following slide. You can see here that the Green Bank does provide flexible terms for ownerships through our CLEAR program with Sandy Spring Bank, and we work with any installer chosen by the condo association, and that's in either case. So the second option here is renting through a commercial PPA. There are residential PPAs that homeowners can take advantage of in HOAs and single families. So you may have heard that term before if you're into solar webinars like we are. The association would sign a PPA or possibly a lease agreement for 20 to 25 years, and the solar installer would own, install, manage, and insure the solar system placed on the property. No upfront costs would be paid, so that's great. And they would pay monthly payments either with the PPA according to the production of the system, or if it's a lease, according to a predetermined monthly payment. Usually it doesn't change throughout the year. And the Green Bank does offer favorable pricing for nonprofits. So our rates are even more competitive if the association is nonprofit, which as I mentioned, most are. And again, we work with any installer. You could go to the next slide for me, Tom. So for associations, let's talk about SRECs. So the SRECs are a carbon offset market that was set up so that solar system owners can pass the carbon offset back to the utilities who purchase the credit, and the utilities then meet their renewable performance standards, or RPS. And for every 1,000 kilowatts that are generated by the solar system, one SREC is earned. I haven't checked today, but the last time I checked, one SREC was valued at about $78. It's important to note that the market does fluctuate and the program is subject to termination. So it may not be around forever. Thanks, Tom. If you can go to the next one. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what the Green Bank offers for renewable energy. We have two options here. The first one is our CLEAR program, or Commercial Loan for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. And we have three lenders: the Revere Bank, the Latino Economic Development Corporation, and Ascentium Capital. Now, it's important to note that we're mentioning energy efficiency. So the CLEAR program can include upgrades for the condo association that are not necessarily related to solar. So anything that would improve the energy efficiency of the building, like HVAC improvements, lighting improvements, and other types of energy efficiency upgrades, can be included. And we can also support up to 30% of improvements that are not directly related to energy efficiency. So just reach out to us if you wanted to talk more about that. And basically the terms are up to 12 years. We do offer 100% financing, so you don't have to have anything out of pocket, and there's no debt on the property in that case. As I mentioned, we also have the Commercial Solar PPA. We do have special rates for nonprofits and faith-based organizations if you belong to one, and you might want to tell them about what we offer. We generally help with projects that are less than 100 kilowatts, but it's not a cap. We provide for a steady price per kilowatt for the solar that's generated by the system. And we do have options for no escalator so that the price doesn't go up over the contract period. There are no out-of-pocket costs, as I mentioned, and the contracts can be 20 years, maybe 25 years. Thanks, Tom. So let's go through a system sample. So this is a large system. This would be for the condo association. We're estimating it at 120 kilowatts, and a system that big, the cost is estimated at about $360,000. Now, we're not an installer, so this is just for example purposes. This is not a quote in any way. We would let Tony decide the number in that case, right? For the generation of electricity, we estimate that the system would generate 165,000 kilowatt hours per year. And the savings on the utility bill from diverting the electricity to solar is $23,000 per year using 14 cents per kilowatt hour. The solar renewable energy credits are going to be between 8,000 and 12,000 per year. And as I said, the program is subject to termination, so we're not sure how many years it's going to be around. The amount that for each energy credit can also change. That's why there's a range there. We just want to be safe. There are different providers that can buy the solar energy, renewable energy credits from you, and they offer different packages. So they would offer you more money or less money depending upon how many years you sign up for. We did put the investment tax credit in there, but we also just let you know that's not available for nonprofits because of the lack of tax appetite. Thanks, Tom. All right, here's an example of the financing for a 12-year term. So same project costs. As you can see, the loan amount is the same. The amount of annual payments is $41,000, and that's looking at a monthly payment of $3,420. The annual production, so the savings on the utility bill is the same, $23,000. And we put the SRECs at 8,000, which is the lower end of the range that we provided. So as you can see, the out-of-pocket net until the loan repays after 12 years is $10,000. I think there was a question about return on investment, so this might be helpful to answer that question. And we can talk more about that after as well. And for 25 years, the annual amount of loan payments is going to be $492,000. The electricity bill savings is really what impacts the total 25-year savings at $575,000. We have SRECs at 40,000. Now, just remember that that's not guaranteed, but there are possibilities that the program could be extended, and we're excited about that. Now, this is the big number here. You can see it's in parentheses, and that's $123,000 saved over 25 years. So that's really where the big savings comes in. You can go to the next one, Tom. Okay, and this is an example of the PPA that we talked about, the rental option, the power purchase agreement. So $0 out of pocket, the same project costs, the same annual kilowatt hours generated. This is at a 12-cent PPA price. The price per kilowatt hour varies depending upon the electricity provider. So Potomac Edison charges a bit less than Pepco and BG&E. So you would just check and see what you're currently being charged, looking at the delivery and supply costs, or you can have one of the installers like Tony do that for you. The PPA payments per year are lower, you can see, than the loan payment, $1,650 a month, or just under $20,000 a year. And the annual metering savings are the same, whichever project type you would do. The out-of-pocket is $3,200, and that's savings, that's negative. So the parentheses you see here are savings. And then over 25 years, your PPA payments are $500,000, your annual savings are $575,000, and your out-of-pocket savings are $80,000, which is great. So we are going to continue to talk, stay on. Here's our contact information. We can probably throw Tony's back up there in a little bit, but we will now open it up for Q&A. I know there are a lot of questions already in there. I just wanted to say thank you so much for everyone. Thank you, Mark and Jay. You guys are amazing.
So let me just give you the first 5 questions that came in from one of our partners, Darlene Hamilton, who is with, I believe it's Leisure World. In any event, the first question is, does this program affect those who run a master meter? Tony?
So I'd say the answer is that, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tom, you got it.
Yep. So yes, it does support master metered properties. In fact, those are probably the ones that would get the greatest benefit because the solar array would flow through one meter. And therefore, all of the credits would go to that one meter, and then the association payments that are associated with electricity would, could diminish over time because the solar would be replacing the grid. But master meter properties often are some of the best for the solar arrays because everybody's paying into one commercial meter. So, Tony, did you want to add to that?
No, that's exactly what I would have said.
That's great. So the next question, I believe, was already addressed, but just at the, to be on the safe side. How does this program affect future or replacement roofing?
I'll take that one. So roof age is one of the considerations when we're doing our design. We like new roofs. If a roof is 1 to 5 years old, typically the remaining useful life of that roof will coincide with the remaining useful life of solar. At the end of a solar contract, if it's under a third-party PPA, there's a clause in the PPA that calls for decommissioning. In other words, we come out, we remove the PV, and we recycle the panels. So that's what happens at sort of the end of it. But if the roof has a significant age, talking to a gentleman yesterday or day before, his roof, the church's roof was 15 years old. That's really almost too old, I would say, unless they wanted to enter into an agreement where we would remove the panels so that the church could do a re-roof, and then we put the panels back on. That's not prohibitively expensive, but it is an additional cost. So new roofs are better. If the roof is in its midlife, we can make accommodations for that. Or in some cases, a midlife roof, it would accelerate the decision process because you want to put solar on it, so you might accelerate that capital investment. But that's what I'd say about roofs. what was the, is there another question there?
Yeah, let me go to the next question. The individual understands that certain animals, especially squirrels, love to chew through wire, solar wiring, panel wiring. Are any measures taken to prevent this from happening?
I have personal experience in this area, and I'd like to share it with the group if I could. Recently relocated up to Northern Virginia I'm so happy with my solar, and I started hearing really loud noises on the roof, and the squirrels found a home under my photovoltaic panels. Never had a problem, apparently never had a problem before, but this year for whatever reason. And I had a company come out, my company came out and installed what's called a critter guard. And if you have trees in and around your house or condominium, we highly strongly recommend, because the way I understand it, some of the wires are coated with something that squirrels like. I don't know what that could taste like, but critter guards are something that we use quite readily around this area.
Very good. Anything else to add, Tom?
I think he covered it.
Excellent, excellent. The next question goes to the issue of distributing savings fairly between those buildings that are conducive to having the panels installed and those that are not. This is just a follow-up to the master deed and bylaws of any condo association, or for that matter, any homeowners association. Did you understand the question?
So I think that may be within the regime of how the condominium decides how assessments get allocated out. I think the solar and the generation of the solar running through the commercial meter provides a single, contribution to the reduction of the utility costs through that net meter. How the distribution happens back to the individual unit owners is within the sort of condominium regime's determination, but the commercial meter would get the single large sort of benefit for the solar array. How the association itself assesses is within the condominium regime. So.
And similarly, who determines the savings for the condominium association or PEPCO and the management company?
So, Tony or Cindy, want to talk about how net metering and getting the credits work?
Cindy, you covered that. Why don't you take that one?
Sure. John, can you repeat the question for me so I make sure I answer it correctly?
Sure. Who determines the savings for the condominium, PEPCO or the management company?
Ah, right. Okay. So I'm guessing we're talking about a community solar subscription.
I imagine.
Well, I guess I can answer that two ways. So if it's a community solar subscription management company, the amount of credits would be determined by your share of the community solar array. So that would be determined by your contract when you first sign up. The number of credits that the system generates is divided equally among subscribers, and then that comes to you on your bill. Now, if we're talking about a condo association and who determines the savings for the condo association, so that would be determined by the production of the solar array that's on the condo association, and that electricity would go right down into the main electric panel to the meter that is connected to, and it would spin the meter backwards as the system overproduces. So if the association is using electricity and generating at the same time, the meter might stay still, but in most cases it would be slowly turning forward or backwards, depending upon how the usage happens. So as far as who determines the savings, I think I understand that as how I explained it, but let me know if I'm not explaining it to the sense that you meant are thinking.
Again, that's a question from Darlene. Darlene, if you're still on the program, if you would just push another response to us, we'll try and.
John, bear with me. I think
Okay.
she's here. I'm gonna unmute her.
Okay.
Darlene, go ahead and, Darlene, you should be unmuted. Darlene? There you go. Go ahead and ask the question. Did they answer everything?
I missed what he was saying. You took me off guard. So if you would mind
Sorry.
repeating it, I'm sorry.
So go ahead, Cindy, you talk.
No, John, you can go ahead and repeat Darlene's question for her.
Yeah, we were just wondering whether or not you heard Cindy's response to who determines the savings for the condominium. Did you hear her response, and did she answer it adequately for you?
Yes, I heard her response, but again, it gets a little bit confusing with Leisure World and management and the condominium. So forgive me for that, but I know I have your number and I can call you.
That's true. That's true.
Perfect.
For more clarification.
And understand too, it doesn't matter where you are. Nobody can disapprove putting the solar up as long as it's the board that is authorizing it, and the board has the authority to put that solar on the common element. They have the right to do that. It gets a little sticky when we're talking about the conduit, but as far as the solar, your management company or the master, as far as Leisure World is concerned, can't say no as long as it's on the condominium's roof and the condominium board has the authority.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just happy to hear about the squirrels.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Darlene.
Should I mute?
And
So the next
Mark,
question. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, Mark, if I could, just so that folks know that, you know, we've been active here. We actually been working most recently with a condominium in the Bethesda area. It's a single property that it's all one building. Everything's master metered, a large roof. They're putting about an 800 kilowatt system on. They're right now in the middle of making a decision as an association to do it. They looked at a couple approaches. One was to finance it through a loan, and then pay off the loan. And after about 12 years, the loan would be paid off, and then they begin to generate the savings from that. And the model that sort of Cindy presented that way. They also then looked at a power purchase agreement in which the price of the purchased electricity was set about 5% less than their current price, and would to be under a 25-year power purchase agreement, and updating the savings over time. I think at this point they're looking more to the power purchase agreement for both the longer term savings benefit, the not out of pocket costs. They have nothing out of pocket in order to do that, and then the whole property benefits from that reduced energy costs because it's all master metered in a single commercial meter. So they look like they're going to move ahead with that. It'll probably be January or so before they make that decision. But and so that's a current example of one of the condominium communities in the county deciding to go forward with a commercial project, or soon will be, depending if the association makes the final decision. But so that's a structure that's out there, and it's being looked at and hopefully acted upon shortly.
Cool. Yeah, I think I talked to them. They were getting ready to do a press release for being, I believe, the first green to do it. John, I'm going to switch gears for a second. I've got somebody with his hand up. He's been up for a while. I'm going to let him ask his question and let you all go back to your Q&A.
Absolutely.
Don McCrae, I am unmuting. If you would look at your screen, you should see the note saying to unmute. There you go. You have the floor.
Yeah, we were approached by a company, I believe it's called Sustainable U, for setting up one. Apparently, where we're located, our grid power comes through DC, even though we're in Maryland. And it really changes the whole formula for for calculating all of the offsets and the amount of credits you can sell and all sorts of other things. And I was just wondering if you all had worked with them at all or are interested in them. Oh, Cindy, you're the owner of Sustainable U.
Yeah, I saw your question in the chat box. Have we heard of them? I have heard of them. I know the owner, Marcus Hoy, and I used to work with him at Tesla, Solar City. Great guy. I did talk to them about working with us here at the Green Bank as well. So are you asking if they're a reputable company or?
Yeah, basically, yes.
So I haven't had any work done on my house from them. But I do trust the owner, I would say, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Anytime.
So I would also just say that you're in the lucky position of being near the DC line and being connected to the DC feeder line, because you do, if you're already connected to the meter, you have the benefit of being able to send those solar renewable energy credits to the DC market versus the Maryland market, and the DC market is a much higher priced market. So there are benefits there, as long as that particular market access remains available outside of the district. There are benefits to that, but again, it has to be reliable. As Cindy said, things do change, but at this point, if you're connected, that's a positive benefit on the DC feeder line.
And Matthew and Michael, I see your hands up. We'll get to you in a second. One of you has your hand up, plus you've got questions in the chat box, and you've got them in the Q&A. We're trying to knock out some of the Q&A first. We've got about 20 questions in the Q&A. Then we'll come back to the raised hand. So if y'all want to go ahead and go into that side for a while, Cindy, John, Tony.
So the next question that I see is what maintenance in general is required for maintaining your solar systems?
Tony, I'll let you take that one. Are you still here?
Yeah, I'll take it. Not much is the answer. Panels need washing every once in a while. You might get in this area pollen dust on them and come out and do a squeegee on them. The thing that is, the components that could fail typically is the inverter. That's the device that takes the direct current, turns it into alternating current. Those things, that's circuitry, and that could fail. Typically, the components, PV panels as well as inverters, are warranted for useful life, 12 to 15 years for inverters. And you can buy extended warranties, but you buy quality products and make sure that they're quality components put on, and it'll last that long. So there's not much maintenance. If you installed just not much maintenance.
Great. The next question comes to us from Jeff Bergman. Discuss roof mounting versus vertical installations. They have a tall building with lots of south-facing walls. Is that viable? They also have open parking areas. Is that meaningful?
I've never done a build with vertical panels. I've done ground mounts and I've done roof mounts. Never done a vertical build. I've seen them, so I can't really. I don't know, Tom, if you've seen or been involved in any of that, or Cindy had been involved in any of that. As far as a parking lot is concerned, we get requests for carports about every other day. They're very expensive. They're nice, but they're very expensive. It can be done for sure, depending on the parking lot and the its location relative to a meter. If you do a carport or a canopy for that matter, you still have to get the wire to the meter somehow. So there are challenges there, but carports are something that as prices come down on components could be more viable. You'll see them more. But vertical panels on south facing buildings, I've never done one.
Yeah, the property that I was talking about earlier did look at carports as an additional solar component to the one that was on the roof. They do price up higher because you have to put up the infrastructure of the carport to hold the panel, right? So you have the added cost of building an infrastructure to put the panels on top of versus the roof already being there. So they do cost more. The nice benefit is you've created now carports. Maybe you can have an association revenue stream from leasing those nice covered spaces. It's not a total offset to the additional cost, but you could potentially get some revenue from that. And when we looked at it, the carports made the project was about 800 kilowatts on the roof and about 300 kilowatts on the carport. It made the project a more break even than positive cash flow over the time horizon just because of the cost differential. There is a benefit. The state of Maryland actually offered a grant to offset the cost of the carport, which did bring the overall price down and did create a little bit more of a positive benefit. That decision hasn't been made about whether to do the carports or not, but they're if the parking structure exists already, adding it on is not as much as building it up from scratch. So, but it should be looked at, evaluated, and then you can sort of look at what the price differential is and see if it works.
Thank you. Mark, I'll turn it over to you for one of the folks that have their hands up.
Okay, Matthew, I think Cindy answered your question in the chat.
I'd like to ask, I got a couple of questions. We are a master metered building with a commercial meter, which means that we are paying a demand charge, something you haven't mentioned. And therefore our energy charge is very low. It's under 2 cents a kilowatt hour. If you add in all the county taxes and fees, it's still under 4 cents a kilowatt hour. I don't see the point of generating SRECs and selling them because at that point you're allowing somebody else to claim the environmental credit. So my question is, and we're probably a couple of years away from redoing our roof, so this isn't a pressing problem. We've got a master meter, we got a house load, peak load in the neighborhood of 400 kilowatts. We probably have space only for a couple of dozen kilowatts on the roof, if that. But my question is, we don't have a tax appetite. Can we bring in a company that would own the panels, sell us the electricity under a PPA, and get that for under 4 cents a kilowatt hour? Would that company be able to take advantage of the ITC that we ourselves can't take advantage of? Thank you.
I think I already answered that, but Tom, why don't I let you take it so maybe you can explain it?
Sure. So what you described is what a power purchase agreement's benefits are, right? Because you have a third party who's coming in to own and operate and manage that. They bring the financing with them. Part of that financing is an equity investor who's interested in that 22% investment tax credit, and therefore they bring that benefit into the equation when they price the per kilowatt hour price for the user to pay for that solar generation. So that 22% tax credit they do, and I appreciate the selling the SRECs is means that you're not environmentally benefiting, you're selling that environmental benefit to somebody else. But in that model of a private financer, they'll look at the SRECs as another revenue stream that they can deduct from the cost of the price of the kilowatt hours that they would charge you. So when you think about it, I'm building a solar array on your property. I'm not charging you anything. I'm putting it up. I'm paying for everything. And how do I get my revenue in order to pay the costs for me to have installed that? I take the tax credit. That takes 22% off the price. I take the SRECs. That can take, that $50 per SREC off the price. So I deduct those two revenue streams. And then the balance is what I have to charge you on a per kilowatt hour basis to pay off the other capital costs I have in order to cover the investment. So they take out a loan in which they have to pay the debt service on that loan. That's where actually the green bank comes in, because that's what we do. We provide that lower cost debt in those instances for nonprofits in order to keep the price of the kilowatt hour down. So you as a user, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So Tom, if we're paying under 4 cents a kilowatt hour, is it worth our time to look at this? Is there anybody who's going to sell us electricity under a PPA in that range?
That's a very low range. What we've been able to price has been more closer to 9 cents per kilowatt hour. So if you're getting 4 cents a kilowatt hour, I'm surprised at that. Maybe I haven't heard that price out there from anybody else. So maybe keep that hushed and be grateful that that's your price.
Tom,
I wouldn't go out talking about it.
I'm sorry, I don't really understand the answer. This is the standard Pepco rate. Are the other large condo buildings with master meters you're looking at, do they pay demand charges?
They do. We have seen demand charges paid, right? So when we're looking at the total cost, you're looking at what the standard offer cost is. You're looking at what the demand charges are in order to come up with the offsettable price, right? And what we've been seeing offsettable prices has been more high 9s, low 10 cents per kilowatt hour.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, Matthew.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom.
Go ahead, Cindy.
No, I was going to say, your demand charges, are they tied to your kilowatt usage? Is it, say, amount of money times the number of kilowatt hours?
Cindy, you're muddling kilowatt hours and kilowatts. Demand charges aren't based on kilowatt hours. They're based on instantaneous kilowatts of demand. But I'm assuming that solar isn't going to help us with that, because the solar peak is going to be around noon and our usage peak is in the late afternoons.
Well, does your bill, where it says demand charge, does it say times and then a number?
Yeah.
All right, so then it does sound like it's tied to electricity and it's not a set charge.
Cindy,
so it may go down.
Cindy, it's tied to kilowatts, not kilowatt hours. That's a fundamental concept.
Yes, I've heard you saying that a few times now.
Yeah, it's just grating to hear you confuse them, because there are people online here who are going to take this as financial information, and it's misleading. This is something, if you're offering financial services, you really need to keep that straight.
Okay, perhaps we can do this offline.
Well, yeah, but John, perhaps you ought to keep this is a government-sponsored thing. You have to keep your information accurate. I'm offended as a taxpayer that you're not doing that. And I caution people on the line here not to rely on this information, because it's not false, it's just muddled.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's
So,
very well
Matt, the way that you can manage your demand charges is to add storage to the component, right? Because your demand charges are occurring, as you say, at a different peak hour. And so that's often when storage is applied to the systems, in order that the solar array, instead of feeding the net meter, feeds the storage. By bringing then the storage online when you can't draw from the solar energy, reduces the period when you might be experiencing that peak demand, and therefore you reduce the period at that peak demand point, which then can reduce your demand charges. So that we've seen that as a way to manage demand charges. It happens mostly in the commercial businesses, because they're running and they have more higher demand than peak, and peak can really hit the commercial properties a little bit more.
Understood.
So
We're a
that's another
commercial
way
property.
to, that's another
Yeah.
way to, yeah, understood. Yeah, you're a commercial property, but offices, things that run 24/7, you know, where they're showing up the demand, you know, is peaking at an off cycle time. Bringing in storage is a way to bring that peak demand down in order to reduce your demand charges.
Okay, thank you very much. So,
Okay, I've got one I'll move into.
okay, go ahead.
All right. This is from Robert. Can Montgomery County Green Bank assist with financing a new condo roof along with installing a solar array?
So what we can look at is what's as noted in our commercial, we can do about 30% more than what is the energy efficiency. So it depends essentially what that roof amount is. And if, you know, a portion of the roof is really being covered by your reserves, right, and then you have a balance left over that could be covered by the loan, we could certainly cover that. But don't forget, you know, the loan still has to be repaid, and the energy savings may be less than the total amount of the debt service on that loan, because now you've not only layered in the renewable energy costs, you've layered in a capital improvement cost, right? So it can cover it, but that, you know, you have to, you know, the savings relative to the, you know, the solar system against the loan will look different because you've now layered in a capital cost on the loan as well.
Okay, and I'm going to get one more hand up, and then I'm going to give it back to John. Michael, I'm going to unmute you if you want to go ahead and answer your question or ask your question.
Very good. Thanks, Mark.
Mhm.
My initial question had to do with one of the slides that Cindy showed, and it was a sample system example, and it had 120 kilowatt hours demand, which is consistent with our condo unit. And then she indicated 165,000 kilowatt hours, a measure of energy estimated. We used that in 3 months, and I suspected that was for a year, that number. So our electricity seemed out of line compared to that slide. And my question was, as far as the number of PV cells we would need, that is totally dependent on the power required, which you've been calling the demand. Am I correct on that?
Cindy or Tom?
So the sample here, the 165,000 kilowatt hours is the projected generation from the 120 kW system across the course of the year. Okay. That's not the facilities generate. That's the solar arrays generation of electricity over the course of a year. So you may have as a facility a much larger electricity draw, but the solar array in this instance sized for this property could generate that. So their bill was probably substantially larger than $23,000 a year because they too would have had a larger, but what they could offset was that amount.
I'm not sure if I understand what you're saying. I guess let me ask it this way: that $360,000, the estimated cost. Yeah. Was that based on a combination of the 120 kilowatts and the 165,000 kilowatt hours of energy per year, or is it just based on the 120 kilowatts demand required?
So the 120 kilowatt system was what was possible on the roof of this building. Okay, so that's the maximum they could actually build of a solar array on the building. It was a 120 kilowatt size array. The 120 kilowatt size array on the high end of $3 a watt was about 360,000. It's probably less than that. That's on the higher end. Okay, so the cost to install that 120 kilowatt array, which is what that building could take, was 360,000. That 120 kilowatt array over the course of a year would generate 165,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. That 165,000 kilowatt hours of electricity would have been represented at $23,000 in their current bill when they were paying 14 cents per kilowatt hour on their bill.
Okay. I'm not
So
trying
that's
to-
what that's.
Tom, I'm not trying to get too technical here, but there's 8,760 hours in a year. And if you're generating power of 120 kilowatts times 8,760, that would be considerably more than 165,000 kilowatt hours over the course of the year. Now, I realize no one is ever generating, requiring the power of 120 kilowatts continuously, but in our case, we're generating our maximum 120 kilowatts, and we are basically averaging about 70% of that if you average it over a month or over a year or whatever. And so it seems odd to me with the data that I'm looking at for our condo unit of you mentioning 165,000 kilowatt hours is what you'd estimate as the energy that 120 kilowatt of maximum demand would give you. Does that make sense to you, what I'm saying?
I think we should probably talk offline and we could sort of work it out there, make sure we're talking the same thing. I'm sure.
Okay.
Okay. So why don't
very
you can reach out to us and why don't we talk through that and see what you're
very
talking
important.
about and what we're talking about.
I would like to, real quick, this is a very quick question. $360,000, okay, that's an estimate. If I said that, hey, I'm handling, let's say, energy conservation for our condo, and I said, well, let me try to determine what it would cost for only 50% of that 120 kilowatts and only 75% of that. Can I linearly interpolate that 360,000 and kind of say the fixed costs are kind of incidental, and it would be accurate to say that if I only wanted 60 kilowatts, would I be able to cut that $360,000 bill in half in order to accommodate our building? Anyone?
It's not linear, because the smaller the array, it doesn't mean that the cost per watt goes down in a linear fashion. So I think, you have to look kind of at each site and come up with a number. I think $3 a watt is probably on a conservative side. It probably could get a little bit better, but the smaller the array, it doesn't go down like that in a linear fashion. Using $3 a watt is not a bad number to use, but it is all site specific, as Tony had said. So
okay, very, very good, Tom. I will be getting in touch with you. Thanks very much.
great, thank you, Matthew.
So the next question comes to us from Tricia Kennedy. She's talking about the various programs you have. I think in the presentation there was mention of a 20-year recoupment. She's thinking principally about outdated and inefficient systems. It seems to her that individuals might want to replace their systems in 10 years and not 20. Are there any stats, number one, and in the alternative, are there systems that can be retrofitted with more modern equipment?
Tony, is that one for you? Tony?
So I can jump in if Tony's not available.
Yeah, no,
Oh, there you are, Tony.
we get this question all the time, and the answer is who owns the system? If you went with a third-party ownership, the economics will drive whether there's a replacement of equipment. If the owner owns it, it typically, you buy the best, latest iPhone you can buy and live with it until you don't want to live with it anymore. I don't know if that makes any sense, but the other thing I'd say about this is that if you install a solar system these days, it's that the photovoltaic panels will produce energy efficiently. They degrade about 0.6% per year. They'll still produce energy over 30 years. So you might not have the best, highest technology in 20 years, but it'll still produce. So long story short, economics will drive whether in 15 years you want to replace equipment. I don't know if that helps, but that's my answer.
And then the second part of that, are there any statistics on this in the industry?
I don't know of any specific citation I can provide. I suspect there is.
Okay.
Cindy, do you know?
There are solar systems from the 50s and 60s that are still around and producing electricity, though at a much lower rate, as Tony was mentioning, because the systems do decrease in efficiency.
Okay. Okay, the next question comes from someone who wants to remain anonymous. They wondered whether or not, or how the panels would withstand a nor'eastern snowstorm and ice storm.
Do you want to take that one, Tony?
Does this have anything to do with what's going to happen tomorrow?
I hope not. And that questioner was anonymous.
We don't like installing PV on north-facing, severely angled roofs. But what happens is you might get
Tony, you're coming
several
in a
inches
little
of
bit.
snow on a photovoltaic panel. Go ahead.
Is it my connection or is Tony coming in a little bit?
Yeah, Tony, your mic was fading in and out.
Am I moving too much?
I don't think so.
You're
Okay.
good now, Tony. Go ahead.
All right, so what'll happen is when after the snowstorm, the sun will come out, it'll heat that panel up immediately and that snow will melt off. It'll shed pretty typically, even on flat panels, snow will melt pretty quickly as soon as the sun comes out after a storm.
I think that answers the question. The next question again comes from someone who wants to be anonymous. If the panels are installed on a condo roof owned by a third party for tax benefits, what typically happens to the panel ownership at the end of the PPA agreement?
There's a clause in the PPA that will deal with decommissioning. Sorry.
I think Cindy was typing a response to it. So I'm going to move to the next one.
I was going to say what Tony said, that check your
Oh, okay.
contract.
Okay.
There may be options for decommissioning at the end of the agreement. There may be options for options during the agreement. I would just say always read your contract before you sign it, and then after you sign it, make sure you keep a copy somewhere where you will always be able to find it. Thanks.
Can you discuss potential problems for condos in urban areas where there's a lot of new construction nearby that could potentially overshadow solar panels on neighboring buildings?
That is a really good point.
Yeah.
I'm not
I'm
sure
afraid I
what.
messed up the question.
No, I'm not sure what the county says about that. Do you guys know? I don't know, right now we are responding to the county's climate action plan. So this could be a good time for us to request some vertical safety measures be added.
We can reach out to environmental protection and get an answer and post it up on the site.
I know DC has some protection for vertically building next to a solar array. I'm not sure about what the county does, but Mark will fix that, right, Mark?
Yes, ma'am.
So the next question comes from Robert. Do you have a list of associations who are willing to share with other associations their experiences with going solar?
Well, I'll field in on this one. You can reach out to the Department of Environmental Protection. They assist with solar of various kinds. They work hand in hand with Tom on a lot of projects. www.montgomerycountymd.gov/DEP, Department of Environmental Protection. And I'm quite sure they could steer you in the direction if you have questions about condominiums, HOAs, whoever that has already implemented solar, be it on the roof or solar lighting for their streets, or whatever the case may be. And if you have issues where you can't get to them, feel free to email us and we'll get the information for you and forward it to you.
Great. Deborah Davenport wants to point out that the question about urban encroachment might be covered by zoning codes. FYI. And I think that answers, or that takes up all of the questions, Mr. Chair, Madam Cindy.
Does anybody have a question we haven't answered? If you would, please raise your hand in the chat box and it will bring you to the top of the list and we'll cover that for you. Hang on, we just got one for Michael. Tony, you said the PV cells decrease in efficiency by 0.06 each year. I calculated that would take 37 years for the efficiency to drop to 80% of the original value. Is that what past data has shown?
Past 0.6%.
Correct.
0.6%.
Right, 0.6. Apologize.
Correct.
Okay. That's good.
correct.
Thank you. Very good.
I don't know if Prasad Kodiswaran is still on, but it looks like he had some questions. Have we heard of someone, possibly a third-party provider through PEPCO? We have heard of third-party providers through PEPCO. It's a great way to change your supplier. I always just tell people, as I'm always saying, read your contract, make sure you know how much you'll be charged and for how long. And then when your contract ends, just make sure you either negotiate a new rate or just are aware of whatever the rate will be outside of contract. Because it may be a little bit higher than PEPCO, but definitely to me is worth the environmental benefits. Thanks.
I didn't know how to ask that question, so thanks for covering that one.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
We was trying to get at.
Yeah.
Any other questions, anybody?
I think that's a wrap, guys.
Yeah, I'm looking, I'm not seeing any hands going up.
Oh, there's one. Oh, thank you. Great session.
Okay,
Well, good.
with that in mind, the session is recorded. Lord willing, the creek don't rise. We will have it edited and put up Friday, Monday latest. Our IT guy is back in town now, so we shouldn't have any problems. If you go to the CCOC website, upper left-hand side, you'll see training and webinars. Scroll down to more information and you'll see CCOC webinars, and it will be posted, the last one down, just as we mentioned when we first opened up, it will be entitled Solar Strategies for Condominiums and Condominium Associations and Owners. We appreciate your participation, and you'll get a little note probably in about 2 days asking you if you have any suggestions, comments, any other webinars you're looking for, and I'll let the panel say the closing words.
Thanks, Tony. I don't know if you want to put your email address in the chat box in case anyone wanted to contact you. I'll put mine in there. And thank you guys so much for a wonderful job. Tom, go ahead.
Yep. Well, Mark, Tony, John, Cindy, thank you. We appreciate this. Hopefully we'll find another opportunity to talk about another subject to the core community. So we appreciate it. It's always a good session. So thank you for your interest and your questions.
Sounds good. And one final thought, in about 2 weeks, the commission will be celebrating its 30th anniversary. We were founded in 1991, a nonprofit organization. We will also be hosting a webinar on what to do with COVID. I know what I would like to do, but we're still being recorded. Anyway, we'll have a seminar coming up at the first part of January, so look for that coming out on the paperless airplane. All right, folks.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody have a good night.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.